In today's video, we're breaking down some fight clips from both Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan ahead of next weekend's main event. And I think that I've spotted a couple of things which, if each fighter applies them, could be the difference between winning and losing. Welcome back to the channel, guys. As I promised last week, we are taking a deep dive into this main event at UFC 311. I know it's frustrating as UFC fans that they don't really do all that much promotion ahead of these massive fights, which is exactly why I created this channel. I want Fight Energy to be a place where we can really get into these fights together, build up that momentum, heading in even before fight week. For example, last week I did that interview breakdown, which was received really well, so thank you very much for that. I think that gave us an idea of where both fighters are psychologically, their mindsets heading into this one. But today is all about technique, with Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan being such technical, well-rounded fighters. It's been really hard to find any holes, any weaknesses in their games. But instead, in these clips, I think I've found some areas in which each fighter can be exposed. But let me know what you guys think about that. Still to come, we have our fight week coverage, which we'll be doing, and my final prediction video. I'll be dropping that at some point in fight week. But if you've been watching so far, maybe I've given a little bit of a hint of where my mind is going with that. But before we get into the first clip, I'm going to ask that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you are interested in going really deep into these big main events, that's what we do on this channel. So the first clip that I want to look at, it's on Arman Tsarukyan. I think it shows both the best parts of his game and areas that were slightly lacking. It's also a clip from the first fight that he had against Islam Makhachev, so it's very, very relevant here. So let's take a look. So this clip starts with both fighters kind of in like a Greco-Roman wrestling clinch. And as you can see here, Islam Makhachev partially lands, hits more of Arman Tsarukyan's forearm and knee through the middle. Now it's important to note at this point that Islam Makhachev, he's not the kind of fighter who just throws things for the sake of throwing it. He always does stuff with intention. And in this video, he's really setting up a trap, setting up a sweep on Arman Tsarukyan. Bearing in mind that Arman Tsarukyan was only 22 years old in this fight, you know, you'd like to think he's gained a bit more experience since then, but he does oblige Islam Makhachev in falling for this trap. So you can see here as we move forward, Islam Makhachev from the clinch lands a nice right hand to the body. You can see the real indent that it made there on Arman Tsarukyan's body. And he's just waiting. He's thrown a couple of strikes, just waiting for some kind of reaction from Arman Tsarukyan. And as we just said, moving it forward a few more frames, Arman Tsarukyan is only too happy to oblige, and he goes to throw a knee of his own. As you can see, with one leg in the air, there is only one leg holding his base, so all of his weight is on that right leg. And Islam Makhachev recognises this, and that's where he initiates the sweep. A beautiful foot sweep with his left foot on Arman Tsarukyan's right, and he's got the upper body control there. He's got an overhook. I believe he's probably got an underhook on the other side, and he rotates his body, the trunk of his body, to land that sweep. That trip, I should say. Now, it's really nice here, straight into side control, but Arman Tsarukyan here attempts to scramble. He attempts to get out of it straight away. You can see he gets his shoulder, he gets his arm really deep under Islam's hip here, because he wants to escape through this side. So he tries to push Islam all the way over his body to escape. There's a lot going on in this clip, but we will be breaking it down a bit slower after we finish the game footage. So you've just seen the nice trip by Islam Makhachev. Arman Tsarukyan attempts to escape through this side. You can see now we've moved forward. He's trying to throw Islam over the top, but Islam's hips are just too heavy. The pressure going down here, really nice. And he ends up in full mount. And look, there's absolutely no shame in being taken down by Islam Makhachev, as I'm sure all of his opponents would speak to. However, it was the manner in which Islam Makhachev was able to get this takedown, to bait Arman Tsarukyan into making a mistake and then him capitalising on it. I have found at times throughout his career that Arman Tsarukyan has lacked concentration at times. In the Charles Oliveira fight, when he found himself in bad positions, submission attempt after submission attempt, and he really cannot afford to do that in this rematch with Islam Makhachev. We're going to move forward a few frames to look at how Arman Tsarukyan reacted to ending up in mount, and really one of the better aspects of his game. So we're just going to move forward a few frames here. Islam Makhachev's so good at using the weight of his hips, but here Arman Tsarukyan's just working with that leg, just one leg here, just to keep this leg, just to keep Islam Makhachev's hips elevated slightly, so there's not so much pressure coming down on him. You can see that the upper body of Islam Makhachev's still working. But Arman Tsarukyan here. And, you know, it's very rare for fighters to get up when Islam Makhachev takes you down, unless he's really going for a finish. So for Arman Tsarukyan to do this, we'll keep it playing forward. There we go. Look how elevated Islam's hips are there. Both those butterfly hooks in. Really elevating Islam Makhachev's hips. This is a really important detail because both fighters probably at some point are going to end up on their backs, and it's great to see Arman Tsarukyan reacting in this way, not settling for bottom position, not trying to hold on and keep Islam Makhachev close to him. And from there, Arman Tsarukyan is able to get back up to his feet. It's so important in that fight, at 22 years old, that Arman Tsarukyan was able to make a mistake that led to a trip, but then not completely panic on the ground, not hold Islam Makhachev close to him to avoid bad ground and pound. Arman Tsarukyan's only priority was to get back to his feet, and that is so important here. And even though Tsarukyan's initial mistake might support my idea that he does lack concentration at times, he was only 22 during this fight. That's really important to remember, and we have seen him grow as a fighter in real time. On top of this, the fact that he was able to get back up, really cleverly using the butterfly hooks, gives me a lot of faith in thinking that he can get back to his feet if Makhachev is able to take him down. Now, we have got quite a few clips to get through in this video, so I'm going to move forward onto a more recent fight of Arman Tsarukyan's, an example of his striking at its best. Also, interestingly enough, against another southpaw like Islam Makhachev. So it might not surprise you that I decided to go for this clip, but it's Arman Tsarukyan against Dariush, and it is the finish. And look, if Arman Tsarukyan can get a finish like this on Islam Makhachev, it would be absolutely historic. But it's just an example of Arman Tsarukyan. He's such a technical striker, and it does go under the radar a little bit. I think when you think of either strong wrestlers or really well-rounded fighters, you don't necessarily appreciate the technical side of their striking. But this finish, brutal, yes, but also very technical. So we're going to move it forward a few frames. So Arman Tsarukyan opens up with a really nice overhand right that goes around the guard of Dariush. Now you can see it forces Dariush to really cover up tight, which means that he can't see what's coming next. Look how tight this guard is. He can't possibly see what's coming next from Arman Tsarukyan. And Tsarukyan, we keep moving forward, goes for a really nice Thai clinch. Really strong grip, two hands on one on the back of Dariush's neck, and pulls him really cleanly into that knee. And look, that knee connects. You can see a massive impact, forces Dariush's head, almost takes his head off all the way up. And then this is one thing which I didn't even notice it in real time, but if you just look, Tsarukyan lands that knee, and when that right hand comes, his right leg is still in the air. It's a knee straight into a punch. So he's already got Dariush wobbled from that knee. And then he follows it up with that right hand. Let's keep moving forward. And look, that reaction says it all. And he goes on to finish Dariush with those strikes. But I just wanted to point out this clip here to show the development of Tsarukyan's striking, and that Islam Makhachev on the feet, for all the plaudits he gets, and we're going to get onto his striking, for how technical his striking has become. Arman Tsarukyan is a very technical striker as well. I think they match up really evenly on the feet. I won't give either of them too much of an advantage, but if Tsarukyan's able to put combinations together like this on Makhachev, it could be a pretty rough night for Makhachev. But anyway, with that being said, let's take a look at some of Islam Makhachev's striking. Now, I remember when Makhachev was on his ascent, coming off that knockout loss, he really had to rebuild himself. It was a bit of a freak knockout. He was winning the fight, but he had to rebuild himself. And he was quite cagey, quite tentative on the feet. No more. Makhachev is a really confident striker, striking with the best of them. So this clip against Dustin Poirier is an example of how good Makhachev's striking is and how well he can blend that with the takedowns. So this sequence starts with Dustin Poirier throwing a jab from the southpaw position, to which, I'll just get the pen, Islam Makhachev slips to the inside. Now this is, I don't want to say bad technique because fighters have success doing that all the time, but it is a risky move. And against an orthodox fighter like Arman Tsarukyan, if you were to slip from the inside of his jab, you'd be slipping to his right hand, which, as we just saw in the previous clip, isn't necessarily the most sensible idea. So Islam Makhachev, if Arman Tsarukyan's watching this, and he notices that Islam Makhachev likes to slip on the inside. It's different being southpaw against southpaw, such as this clip. But if Islam Makhachev does make a habit of slipping to the inside, the right hand could be on for Arman Tsarukyan. Anyway, back to this clip. So Islam Makhachev slips to the inside and lands a nice clean overhand left of his own, which really gets a big reaction out of Dustin Poirier. Let's move it forward a few frames. Now, Islam Makhachev swarms Dustin Poirier here. Not all that much regard to his own defence. You can see his hands are fairly low. They don't really come back to his chin. But you can see Dustin Poirier here. He doesn't really look as though he's about to throw anything back. But if you have seen the Benoit Saint-Denis against Dustin Poirier fight, you know that Poirier is always dangerous. So Makhachev here throwing forward recklessly. Again, another thing for Arman Tsarukyan to consider. But still, this is all bigging up Islam Makhachev, who has swarmed Dustin Poirier, really rattled him with the striking, and this is where Islam Makhachev does his best work. Dustin Poirier shows a left hook, which Islam Makhachev is able to step out from, and then he goes for a level change. And Dustin Poirier is caught completely square there. Islam Makhachev has a nice entry, gets one arm around his the back of his knee, other arm around his hip, and then drives him back to the fence. And this being driven back to the fence is something we're going to speak about in more detail soon. Let's just let this clip play out. He gets a nice double leg entry against the fence. And this is going to be a trademark Islam Makhachev. He's going to switch his grips, if I remember correctly. It is interesting doing it frame by frame. I know it's a bit frustrating with the copyright, but I do think you see another angle of the fight when you do it slowly. You see more details, obviously. So Makhachev here, he's switched his grip. So he had it originally on his hip, and now he's gone for a high crotch grip. So he's got effectively both his arms below Dustin Poirier's groin, driving him against the fence. He steps in. Here we go. He steps in so that his hips are more under Dustin Poirier's. Gets a nice lift. And then with this left foot. With this left foot, he's just hooking it behind Dustin Poirier's left foot to off-balance him and send him onto his back. So that's the clip that I wanted to look at of Islam Makhachev mixing up the striking and mixing up the takedowns, but also showing a couple of areas that might be exposed by Arman Tsarukyan. Slipping inside, for example, and then a bit reckless. If he thinks he's got Tsarukyan hurt, he will just blitz forward, storm forward, and there could be a potential counter for Arman Tsarukyan. On the flip side, that was total domination from Islam Makhachev. He had Poirier hurt. Poirier is meant to be one of the best boxers in the lightweight division, and Makhachev had him hurt early on in the first round. It was only 30 seconds in when we started that clip. Drove him back to the fence, got a really nice takedown, got his back against the fence, and a lovely, lovely high crotch takedown. So before we move on to the next clip, let's have a quick review of what we've learned so far from these clips. Firstly, it was that Arman Tsarukyan clip being tripped by Islam Makhachev. Two things there. Islam Makhachev, he likes to set traps. He's going to try and bait you into doing something, wait for your reaction, and then take you down. And Arman Tsarukyan showed a bit of naivety back then, but there is the asterisk by then. He was only 22 years old, so how much are you going to read into that? Next, we took a look at Arman Tsarukyan's finish of Beneil Dariush, and what a finish it was. It just goes to show the technicality of Tsarukyan's striking, how well it's come on, and how much of an explosive finisher he has become. I'm sure that Makhachev and his team will have recognised that Tsarukyan has had success against southpaw fighters. Admittedly, Dariush is by no means the fighter that Makhachev is, but these are still important details to notice. And then finally, Islam Makhachev's ability to mix up the striking. He's got really technical striking as well, mixing that up with the wrestling, which has led him to become the champion he is today. If Arman Tsarukyan is able to stop the striking, there's still the wrestling threat, and vice versa. But it doesn't all spell doom and gloom for Tsarukyan, because I have picked out a clip from the Dustin Poirier fight against Islam Makhachev, where Poirier was able to get out of a pretty bad position, and Tsarukyan, with his scrambling ability and his grappling, which is of a higher level than Dustin Poirier's, this clip should give him a lot of confidence. Let's take a look. So at the start of the video, I said that both fighters want to keep their backs off the fence because that's where each fighter does their best work. However, this isn't quite having your back against the fence, but it's still a pretty bad position to be in if you're Dustin Poirier. Islam Makhachev has that body lock, and Dustin Poirier is sort of keeping himself up with his hands posted out there. He's technically a grounded opponent at this time. However, Poirier is about to do something really sneaky. If you just take a little note of the placement of Dustin Poirier's right foot there. As we move forward through the frames, Dustin Poirier, he's turning his hips inwards, and you can see his left arm comes up here. Really important to note. Let's keep it going. Look at his leg here. This is a brilliant trip. Very, very sneaky. He's turned his body inside. He's turned his hips over to face Islam Makhachev. In doing so, here you go, he's tripping Islam Makhachev's legs over his one leg there. It's a very athletic move. You've got to have some flexibility to you, but we know Tsarukyan's one of the most flexible fighters in the UFC. He's also bringing this arm on the inside of Islam Makhachev's legs for a potential single leg or back take here. Let's keep it playing through. Really nice trip by Dustin Poirier. So yeah, he's keeping his arm in there, so he's got options to work up to single legs if he gets his other arm around there. But nevertheless, this clip is just showing that Islam Makhachev, he's great, but he's not perfect. You're not always going to get taken down with him, even if you think you're in a terrible position like that. And one of the things that marked out Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev's first fight for being so good was that it was so back and forth with the grappling, something we hadn't really seen Islam Makhachev dealing with before. So this example from Dustin Poirier, yes, it's a bit flashy. Ultimately, it didn't lead to much because Poirier still ended up getting finished later on in the fight. But it just shows that if you dare to try something different, don't accept bad positions against Islam Makhachev. Not only can you get out of these grappling exchanges, you can also have some success of your own. And whilst I'm not expecting Makhachev, I wouldn't call this a mistake, but whilst I wouldn't expect Makhachev to fall for too many traps, fall for too many takedowns, if Arman Tsarukyan is going to win this fight, he needs to have some advantageous grappling positions. If Makhachev wins the grappling, he wins the fight. That's not quite my prediction, but that is very, very integral to my prediction. So we've got one final clip to look at, and it is one of my favourite finishes in recent times, purely because of this takedown at the start from Islam Makhachev. I've got my pen at the ready, but I'm not sure I even really need it. The thing is that Dustin Poirier is almost doing everything right at this point. He's got a post on the head. He's probably just getting ready to turn his hips around and kick out from this grip because he's got such a low grip on Dustin Poirier's ankle. But Islam Makhachev, I think they call it the golf swing takedown. I mean, just look at Dustin Poirier is just helpless at this point. But it's not only the takedown. So Islam Makhachev gets a really, really clean takedown, which is just offensively good. Completely bodying. I didn't realise that he face planted there. Completely bodying Dustin Poirier. But it's this reaction which makes Islam Makhachev such a killer. With 2 minutes 47 into the 5th round. And despite getting an amazing takedown, that's not enough for Makhachev at this point. He was winning the fight. It was a great fight. It was competitive. Makhachev was winning this fight. But he's all over Dustin Poirier here. We're not going to quite get to the finish here, but it's a nice setup. It kind of just continues on from here, where I think it's a Bravo choke he finishes with. But again, it's this killer instinct that Arman Tsarukyan needs to be really wary of. We've seen him make mistakes in the past with Charles Oliveira. Islam Makhachev isn't going to let him get away with it. And there's one specific choke that I'm thinking of which Makhachev loves to do. I think I mentioned it at the start of the video, but I think that is going to form a fairly key part to my prediction. I'm not saying that he'll necessarily get the finish, but I think that submissions from Makhachev against Tsarukyan will be threatened a number of times in this fight. Tsarukyan leaves himself too exposed at times. Islam Makhachev, he's hunting the finish, as he said in the interview breakdown. And just the way he dismantled Dustin Poirier at the end in that 5th round shows that this is a guy not wanting to cruise to decisions anymore. He's wanting to get finishes and he wants to close the chapter on Arman Tsarukyan. He said that in the interview, and I believe that he's going to go for that in this fight. Both of these guys are such elite fighters, and it has been difficult picking out just a few clips, but I hope it's made sense why I've picked out the clips that I have done, because I think it tells a bit of a story of how I think this fight's going to go. The areas which I think are key. It's the aggressiveness of Arman Tsarukyan's striking and his overall development as a fighter. And Islam Makhachev, where to begin? He's pound for pound #1 for a reason, mixing up takedowns, striking, and with a killer instinct which has really come on in recent fights. He is just such a problem. Arman Tsarukyan, whichever way you look at it, he is up against it in this fight. I hope you guys enjoyed this technical breakdown. I am a fan, I don't claim to be an expert. Let me know if you think there's anything specific that I've missed, or just something from another clip, another fight where you think this could play a key role in the outcome of Makhachev against Tsarukyan. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.